Marky Worthington Podcast all day.
All day.
Dream by night.
Don't buy me a drink. Just give me $10.
All day.
Go down to the strip club with your floppy disk and turn it into a hard drive.
Yeah, right. You'll get fucking thrown out by Big Tony.
We're here to name names and make people feel more ashamed for shit that they're not proud of.
Don't blow it. Keep it simple. Count your money.
No, whatever it is.
Hey, welcome to the Marky Worthington Comedy Episode 63 with the great Matt Stewart. How you doing, buddy?
Really good, thanks, Marky. Appreciate you calling me great. That gave me a real boost right off the bat.
Yeah.
Feeling like I'm, you're the wind beneath my wings.
Yeah. Well, I had to sort of put you on the higher level because, like, with two dudes with red beards, I didn't want anyone to think that there was any competition going on there.
I think you're beating me beard-wise, but yeah, I'll call your Marky Worthington's great beard. I don't know.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It's just like when I put together the upcoming gig that you've got. We'll do in plugs. Obviously, I don't do plugs at the start because I'm not. I'm a professional and I know where in the show they go. But yeah, when I was putting the poster together, I said to my media guy, I was just like, "Oh, don't get them mixed up. Like, I should be the small picture."
We could do a brothers act, some sort of like a twin.
Yeah,
twin comedy. That's
some
big
sort
stuff.
of like. We could call ourselves like, I don't know, like Umbilical Brothers or something cool.
Yeah, and Beardical Brothers.
Beardical Brothers, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm already getting career boost just from being close to that name. It's like when I'm going to try not to make this a podcast about every podcast I've ever done, like a best of episode where I talk about every show I did and just use it as the platform.
Clips. A clips episode. They always suck. Don't you hate that when a show you love and it's some sort of sitcom or something and ends up being a clip show? Ooh.
Yeah, like the you can tell when they like wanted a week off over the Christmas break because they put out the clips episode. I listened to one where they actually let the fans submit the clips, so that was kind of cool because they like it wasn't like their producer's idea of the best clips.
Oh, right. This is a podcast.
Yeah, so I listened to
sick.
Yeah, believe it or not, aside from my own podcast, I do listen to some others, although, I don't listen to my own, aside from when I edit it. The only thing I do is mark it as read on my feed, so it just, like, doesn't come up anymore.
Yeah. I think... does that give you an extra download as well? I reckon all those numbers count.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it actually... I've actually got no reviews except for one star. That's...
What was the 1-star review?
There was no actual review written to it. It was just a 1 star with no comment.
Oh, that sucks. What an asshole.
To be fair, I had my brother on the show and... there was a little heat there from an ex-girlfriend. Thought that perhaps someone he mentioned was her, but it was like not her.
Right, but do you think it was an ex-girlfriend gave you a 1-star review? Is that what you're thinking?
Of one of my guests, yeah.
Bloody hell!
The best part about that is it wasn't actually even about that person. So it's like I was saying as I was saying to my brother, I was just like, dude. Did you break up with her because she was narcissistic? Because, like, I feel like it'd be funny to think that someone was talking about you when they weren't, and that's the reason the relationship failed.
Yeah, that's and then listening to them on a podcast as well.
Yeah,
feels like it sounds like you're not doing yourselves any favors. You're still feeling the pain, and then just brutal. That'd be a pretty funny. I wish she'd written something about it.
Oh, for sure. Like
1 star. How dare you talk about me?
If that wasn't that person, either way, if you're going to put in a 1 star, you should be passionate enough to explain why.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely.
I think that, like, look, a 3, even a 4, no description, that's fine, right? It's like so-so. but both ends of the scale, 1 and 5, definitely requires an additional information.
You got to show your workings out there. As I know you have mathematical guests on here a bit, so I just thought I'd use a bit of maths lingo there.
Oh man, just so that you guys know, that's a callback to a conversation we had off mic, but Matt's a professional and didn't want to actually mention that, but see, I don't mind bringing it up.
Yeah, well, I think whoever's listening now, I think you should all take a pause for a moment and give a 5-star review just to tilt the scales back in the positive.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a good follow. That's like a good way to close off that particular segment. Just doesn't matter what you think. Just 5 stars, good to go.
Yeah, I reckon that's good. I used to do when I used to do a podcast called Primates. I used to have a thing where I'd say, any 5-star reviews, whatever you write, I'll read it out on the show, as long as it's a 5-star review. So you can tell me, you can say it sucks, but if you do it next to a 5-star review, I'll read it out on the show. So I reckon you should do that next week, or next month. Any 5-star reviews that come in, you should just read them out no matter what they say. Even if they're from an ex-girlfriend or a brother's ex-girlfriend or whatever, you have to read them out word for word, whatever they write. As long as it's 5-star though. Yeah.
No, that okay. That's it. I'm coining it. From on this show, we read 5-star reviews, no matter what you write, as long as it's 5 stars. That's what
the algorithms only see the stars, I think.
Yeah, exactly. There would be too complicated for them to actually detect text and see whether it was actually 5 stars. But yeah, it's some of that AI shit's pretty crazy. The amount of things that are targeted towards me. For some reason, I keep getting recommendations to listen to Hamish and Andy's podcast, so it's not really up there, but it's getting there.
I reckon, they probably get to most people, Hamish and Andy, I think.
Yeah, well, I think that their podcast image is actually on the podcast app store as an example.
Right. Yep. That is what podcasting can be. That's what we all aspire to.
It's funny because the times that I've listened to Hamish and Andy has been back in the day, radio sort of stuff. I've never listened to their actual podcast, but they've been doing it for so long that you actually they're across each platform. When radio was the main talk show platform, they were on that, and then podcast, they're on that. It's a duo that's lasted the test of many platforms.
Yeah, totally. I reckon they would be the reason why a big chunk of Australian people even know what a podcast is, I'd say.
Yep.
Which is handy to have them. And then they fall down a crack once they download a podcast app and stumble upon us, maybe.
Yeah. They're also the reason that a lot of Australian knows who Andy is.
That's true. That is true, I guess, technically. Maybe if we say Hamish and Andy enough, the algorithms and the AI will hear it and then suggest this episode to people who are already listening to Hamish and Andy. I mean, you're more of a tech guy than me. Is that possible? If I keep saying Hamish and Andy, that it'll somehow... I'll tell you what will happen for sure. I'll start getting advertised Hamish and Andy. My phone is no doubt listening to me.
I think the one thing that would happen is it's probably more likely if someone was to write a review and say that it was their favourite podcast except for Hamish and Andy.
Yeah. Nothing beats Hamish and Andy, but this is my number 2 outside of Hamish and Andy. Yeah, I think everyone who's writing a 5-star review should, if they can, work Hamish and Andy into the review as well.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. That's how I know that it was from this episode they heard it and not from a flow-on one where I have to read something crazy out just because it's got a 5-star next to it. Did Did you ever have any crazy stuff like when you read those reviews out? Is there anything that you remember that someone wrote?
There was a lot of baffling stuff. I can't remember anything in particular, but yeah, there was some that were just like overly sweet, and they always felt the most awkward to read out. You know, when they're just actually being really kind, and you're just reading out a compliment about yourself. That felt awful, but yeah, no, I can't remember. There were definitely some weird ones, but none that come to mind, I'm afraid. I shouldn't have brought it up without any receipts there. Sorry about that, Marky.
Oh, that's all good, man. We're all about not having receipts here. This isn't tax time, so actually, it's funny you mentioned like hard to read compliments about yourself, man. I listen to Bill Burr's Monday Morning Podcast, and whenever people write into the show, they might have like a legitimate like question or like something that they want to weigh in on a subject or whatever. But before that, they'll usually have like the top part of the email that's like, "Hey, really like the show, been listening to your stand up for years, blah blah blah," and then they'll have like the question.
Yeah.
And they were chatting about how comedians, for some reason, it's just like how they can't take a compliment. Like, it's like you're on stage, you want to be seen, you like need to advertise and promote yourself, but then the minute that someone gives you any positive feedback, you're like, I don't want to hear that, and feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
So, like, when he gets those emails, you'll just see him reading them out loud, hear him reading them out loud, and just be like, all right, love the show, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And then, like, This is why I hate you.
Yeah.
And he'll read that bit.
Billy Potato Head or whatever.
Yeah. It's just like, hey, Billy Red Nuts. He's like, oh, this will be a good one.
That's another. We're talking exclusively about red bearded men today.
Yeah, true. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if Hamish and Andy have red beards.
I've seen
Hamish probably could have a bit of ginger in there.
Yeah, well, yeah. Right, well, let's be fair. When you're talking about Hamish and Andy, you're talking about Hamish.
Hey, every duo needs you're not a duo without the second guy.
Yeah, true.
He's underrated, I reckon, Andy.
True actually. But there's that's you not like burning any bridges with like one of the biggest podcasts in Australia. So
yeah, I'm always thinking about just in case Andy's listening to the Marky Worthington Comedy Podcast. And he's going, oh, I wonder, should I have one of these two on as a guest on the Hamish and Andy podcast? Hang on a minute, he's just burnt me there. I've always got that in the back of my mind.
Like I said before, man, you're the professional here, so I'm glad that you're able to keep me on the straight and narrow in the podcasting world.
He's also, but he hosts a show called The 100 now, Andy, and it's got Mike Goldstein's like a regular guest on it, and and I think I should really watch it, but I hardly ever watch actual TV. Isn't that a funny thing about streaming that normal TV, if you're like, oh, I've got to actually remember it at a certain time or whatever. Although they all stream as well, don't they?
Yeah, a lot of them stream. Like I watch, like a few of my my buddies in the Canberra comedy scene had like sets for like Deadly Funny or Raw or whatever. And I've never watched one of them live, but I've seen a few of them like on the restream. Yeah,
cool. Deadly Funny. Did you have any mates in the Deadly Funny last week?
Yeah, Kai Fei.
Oh, cool. I didn't. I wasn't there, but the studio I helped run filmed it. I say help run. I'm very inactive.
Stupid old studios.
Stupid old studios. Yeah,
I've been there for a podcast that I did when I was in Melbourne one time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Whose podcast is that?
So I record it. It's another podcast I do called Canberra Metalheads.
Right. Yeah.
And I think so. Last time you were in Canberra, just to like bring this into the conversation, we were chatting about podcasting, and I think that's why this came up because we were chatting about podcasting. I mentioned that I did my Canberra Metalheads podcast, and I'd recorded at Stupid Old Studios before, and we interviewed a local band there, member of a local band there. I think it was either just before I put out this podcast, or like I maybe recorded but not put out the first episode yet. But yeah, we were chatting about that, and that so I went when I was in Melbourne one time. I met up with a local band member and recorded an episode there and put that out as my Canberra Metalheads podcast. I think I did an episode weekly for like 2 years, and then
Cool.
Yeah, and then cut it back to like now that I've covered most of the local Canberra bands and a few interstate, even international, I've cut back to just whenever there's a gig on that I want to promote, I'll just do like individual episodes.
It is like, it's a big metal scene, isn't it, Canberra, for some reason?
Yeah.
Metal for the Brain, is that?
That's what started it. So, Metal for the Brain, I think, finished in like 04, 05 was the last one.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
right.
But it had some really big like names on it for the time. Like it was just such a like monumental part of getting metal off the ground in Canberra, and then those followers kind of just stayed dormant until they sort of started until more recently, the last like 10 years. They sort of just either had families and stopped going out to gigs, or just didn't have anywhere real to go. And then with more and more venues doing live music, then it sort of picked up again.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a real like dip after that, like a pretty big hole left in the scene.
There's like a big international metal band from Canberra, isn't there?
So there was a band called Armored Angel that used to play Metal for the Brain, and they were massive. And the bass guitarist, I think / singer, I'm not 100% sure. He was one of the ones that I tried to get to meet me at the studio, Stupid Old Studios, for the interview, because he lives in Melbourne now.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so he wasn't available, so I managed to queue up another band, but the drummer from that band is still in Canberra. So that band stopped, and then they, like, one went to Melbourne, the other stayed in Canberra. So, but yeah, they were really, really big, like, and they were like sort of like the headliners for Metal for the Brain sort of thing.
Yes,
because they weren't just big; they were local, so that sort of like helped.
Canberra, it's such an interesting city, Canberra, I reckon. It's like, yeah. So I think I was reading it's like the most educated city in Australia or something.
Yeah. See, the problem is I'd have to be able to read to like see that, but
yeah, okay. Well, yeah, that's
it makes sense that someone from Melbourne could point that out for me.
Yeah, and then it's it's obviously all the politics, and but yeah, then a metal scene, and what else is there? Like there's Sport the Saints. I think they're playing this week up in Canberra against the Giants.
Yep.
In the AFL, and there's regular footy, and remember, you wouldn't remember this probably, but Merv Hughes that used to play for the Canberra Comets in the cricket.
Nah.
He's the all-time great bowler. So it was a real boon for Canberra having Merv in there for a bit.
Yeah. Well,
I reckon Canberra's fun. It sort of gets a rap as being like a bit soulless because it was a designed city or whatever. But I mean, that was a long time ago. Things are changing.
Well, the good thing is I feel like there's a couple things there. So from a comedy standpoint, I've noticed when I do other towns, Canberra, as you said, you would know from touring as well, you can tell which jokes hit different in different places. I tend to find like you said, sometimes you'll say something like a joke that people call, it's a thinker or whatever.
Yeah.
That will get the laugh quicker in Canberra than if I did it at like fucking Goulburn.
Right. Oh, there you go.
Take that, Goulburn. Nah, fuck it. I like Goulburn. But, you see...
The home of Rambo.
Yeah, trying not to... So you're trying to save me from severing ties with Australia's biggest... Well, let's not get on the world scale. Australia's biggest podcast. I'm just trying not to sever ties with the rural towns surrounding Canberra.
Yeah, no, you got to remember they got the big ram there. It's what else have they got? Goulburn. That's not the same place as the Two Fruits, is it? That's Goulburn Valley.
Yeah, no, it'd be silly to make like two big things in the same town.
That's true.
I think you kind of got to choose which one you want to be known for.
Yeah. Canberra went for the Australian capital. It's pretty bold sort of one to go for Canberra.
Yeah, we just came in like after everyone else was already established and we're going for the capital, and we're not going to even be the biggest city. And to be fair, we're not even going to plan to be the biggest city. The only thing that's going to be planned to be the biggest part of the city is probably the airport. We'll make that massive and just have maybe about a quarter of the amount of people that is required to fuel that expensive economy.
That is ballsy. It's a ballsy city. Well, it's balls as big as Rambo, the Goulburn's big concrete ram.
We exported the balls for Rambo from Canberra. Actually.
Yeah, Canberra built.
They were everyone pitched in.
That's beautiful. Canberra community.
Yeah, we just scraped, because it's made of concrete, so basically just got a small piece of footpath from every suburb to make the balls for Rambo. And
it must have been so nice.
It was, yeah.
Everyone coming together, pitching in to help create big merino balls.
The other thing I was going to say about like Canberra establishing itself over the years, like you're saying, it sometimes gets a rap for not being as established for as long, or sort of being a bit newer, or whatever other words I want to put in your mouth in that sentence there. But I think so I've been in Canberra for 10 years now, and I feel like I'm glad that it's drawing more influence from like the arts to develop its name, instead of like the sort of political side of the scale. I know it's got a lot of like, people that work in government and are heavily influenced by politics, but it tends to be a lot of work with the arts going on. Like they have like a lot of encouragement for like music and comedy and performance in general. So I tend to find that when I visit like Sydney or Melbourne, I think that we're leaning more towards Melbourne than Sydney as far as like which sort of style we're following, which is good.
Yeah, right. Well, I guess it's hard for a place like Canberra to go Sydney style when you're missing that beautiful harbour. You can't. It's hard to just all of a sudden have a big, beautiful bridge. But Melbourne, what you can get, you could get the Melbourne grey skies and a few coffee shops. Like, all right, now we're getting a bit Melbourne-like. I think that's probably more achievable for Canberra to aspire to Melbourne style than Sydney style. But I feel like whenever I'm there, which is, well, pre-COVID would be like once or twice a year. Dude, it felt like it had its own vibe. Like it felt like a kind of unique city. Although, all the Australian capital cities feel vaguely the same, I guess.
Yeah. Well, they're all like, let's be fair, they're all trying to be bigger than what they are, right? Like they're always, like it's like we had a comedian living in Canberra for a while that was from Washington. And she was saying that like you know, she's from a small town in Washington. It's still bigger than Sydney, but it's like on the American scale. It's a small town.
Yeah, that's great.
It's like when touring bands come through. Like, so I work at the basement as well as host comedy there, and we used to have a lot more, obviously with COVID, not as much, but like when we'd have international bands coming through, and we still have plans to have them back once they can, like everything's been rescheduled, but a lot of international bands, sometimes when I'd interview them for the Canberra Metalheads podcast, they would be like expecting this to be like the biggest date on the tour, so they'd put it like at the end or something like that,
right?
Because it's the capital. So they'd be like, oh man, this is going to be like the biggest show out of all of them because it's the capital city. That's interesting, because I mean, it's, yeah, in America, it's the capital city's Washington DC, right? Maybe that is a big city. I don't even know. I'm sure that it's like
it's bigger than Canberra.
Yeah, I'm sure it's bigger than Canberra. Probably.
Yeah, no, it actually probably is pretty. Yeah, like you say, they've just got all their cities are huge.
I doubt they have bigger Rams than Goulburn, but I think that they're probably bigger than Canberra.
That's something they got to work on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to see the white, just next to the White House, overshadowing it, a huge ram.
Maybe France can export them some sort of ram statue.
Yeah. That'd be a beautiful gesture from France.
Well, I don't think they've done anything similar in the past as far as like exporting anything monumental. So no sort of big ram holding a torch or whatever. That'd be sick. Yeah. We chatted about podcasts before. With my other podcast, and we chatted about what we're listening to as well. I tend to find it's too hard to like fit any extra podcasts. Like I feel like I get about a new episode every like day at least of a podcast. So if I don't listen to an episode a day, they pile up.
Yeah.
Big time. Yeah, so I listen. I've probably got about 8 podcasts that I listen to. So if you get one that puts out an episode a week, then they tend to add up. Is there any that you listen? I know that you've got your own podcast, which we'll chat about in a minute. But is there anything that you listen to when you're not recording?
Good question. Luckily, I got my phone. I can check.
You knew it was coming. I could see you reach for the phone once I was leading into it. I was like, I'll buy him a couple extra minutes. It's a bit like when the MC isn't back from the bar yet, so you just run a little bit longer on like...
Yeah, you can see them. They're still waiting for their beer or whatever.
Yeah. You start thanking the bar staff and shit.
Yeah. Anyway, everyone, I hope you all having fun. Anyway, any questions?
Trying to remember the sound guy's name.
Yeah. The one because I'm a Saints fan in the AFL. There's a podcast called Unplugged. That's like just a fan podcast about the Saints.
Yep.
I smashed my phone last week, so this is like an old phone, so it's kind of out of date a little bit on the podcast on here.
Yep.
Book Cheat, I like. It's a podcast Dave Warnocky does where he reads a classic book and then summarizes it to a couple of comedians.
Yeah. And
so you basically just get the cheat notes without ever having to read Pride and Prejudice or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And I like Tony Martin's Sizzletown, classic.
Yep.
What about you? You got any hot tips?
So I mostly listen to podcasts of comedians that I like. None
that you don't like. That makes sense, I guess.
Oh, I mean, what I mean is that there's a few podcasts out there where the hosts aren't comedians, like they're just podcast hosts.
Yeah.
Whereas I'll find a comedian that I like, and then I'll find out, they do a podcast, and I'll start listening to that. Like, for example, I listened to, we spoke about the Bill Burr Monday Morning podcast. I listen. So Bill Burr's got a guy that used to open for him called Paul Verzi, and he does a podcast with Bill. I listen to the joint podcast that they do and Paul Versi's own personal podcast. And I listen to Joey Diaz's podcast, Uncle Joey's Joint. Used to be called The Church of What's Happening Now. I listen to Legion of Skanks with that's a New York comedy podcast.
Yeah, it's a lot of American.
Mostly American.
American comedy, yeah.
Yeah, mostly American, as well as like mostly either New York comedians or comedians that started in New York and then branched out to LA. To be fair, I find, because I watch a lot of their comedy and listen to their podcast like every day. Like it's one of them. I listen to one of their podcasts. Like, although Bill Burr's, you probably already know this, but and anyone listening to this show is obviously already knows who Bill Burr is. If you've found me down the rabbit hole, then you've gone past him. But although he's LA based, he was like Boston. So I think that it's I'm not intentionally, but it's happening is I'm like influencing some of my comedy like towards like a New York style comedian, which I like without sort of trying to I don't want to accidentally rip off a bit or whatever, like subconsciously. But yeah, I like the like New York style comedy.
Yeah, right. You got any plans to go over there to work or anything?
Dude, I'd love to. It's one of those things where it's like, I think everything's been put on pause for a couple of years. So like where I may be now versus where I am now could be two different things. It may be for the better, it could be for the worse, who knows. But it's not something that's like in my sights at the moment as far as like right now, but it's definitely a goal. Like I have a bunch of things that I'd like to do, and doing comedy in America is definitely up there.
Yeah, it's a goal of mine as well. We were going to be doing a Do Go On podcast tour of America in 2020,
mm-hmm.
and then the COVID hit, so end up going to be pushed back by like at least 3 years. I know it won't happen till at least next year now. So
yeah,
but yeah, while we're doing that, I will be trying to book some stand up
while you're there
stuff as well. Yeah, which would be living the dream a bit. Yeah, doing stand up in New York is pretty. That's sort of the home of it all, pretty much.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's on my list, but it's not really on my list as like a bucket list thing. It's like if I want to do it, I want it to be like something that I don't just. It's what I like to call like not a one rep goal. Like, when people go to the gym, they're like, I need to bench 250 kilos. They do one rep and they're like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that by the time I get to that point where I can do it, it's something that like I might be able to continue doing, or when I do it'll be like I'll be able to set a good impression.
Yeah, maybe we'll like even go spend some years there or something. Yeah,
for sure. It's like, it's definitely something I don't want to do half-assed. But I feel like just in the last so this is my 5th year of doing comedy, and I feel like just in the last like couple years, I've started to like really lean into that, like not just doing my bits, like just like reading the room, and like if crowd work comes up, just like sort of like having like quick like responses and like more witty shit, like instead of just going up and doing my like I've got a 5-minute set, this is it, see you later.
Yeah, that's good. It's all about I think it's just like a time thing, right? You just get better the more you do it. You learn as you go. It's very hard to learn without doing it kind of skill.
Oh dude, I just realized that I'm like talking to a pro about me doing comedy, and you're like, well, champ, you got to start somewhere.
No, not at all. I think it's that's totally true. feel the same. Like the longer you go, the more comfortable you
Yeah.
feel deviating from your, at the start, it's almost like, for me anyway, it was like word for word, what I plan is what I'm doing. There's no room for like any sort of spontaneity or anything. But yeah, I think that's just a comfort thing and an experience thing. I'm not 10 years in yet. That's when they reckon you start getting half decent. I'm still a couple of years from that. So
the old 10-year apprenticeship, they say.
Yeah, that's right.
You mentioned before about Do Go On. Just quickly, some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, because I've listened to Do Go On for, I think, I started listening to it not long before I met you a couple years ago. And it was, I think you just mentioned that you're about to start doing that tour. I think you went to the UK for the Do Go On tour.
Yeah, that's right.
Or was about to go. It was around that time. Now, there's obviously a lot of research and stuff that would have to go into that show, because a lot of, it's like historical stuff. What goes into like prep for an episode?
Well, it sort of depends on the topic, but it's usually it's watching. I normally start by watching some documentaries about it, assuming there are any.
Yeah.
And then if I can find a decent audio book, like if it's about a person biography, then I'll try and, if I can find their autobiography, that'd be a bonus. And then it's just like reading a lot of articles on the classic websites, Britannica and biography.com.
Batuta.
Batuta Advocate is obviously a good one. All those sort of, blandish sort of websites. Wikipedia.org is a good one as well. So, and it's just, just sort of getting right into it. It's depending, like usually I find it interesting researching topics, but I always feel like, because it's, we record like for an hour or two. It's a comedy, like, it's a brief comedy version of a history, or, the report that you're right is relatively serious. I guess the comedy comes in the other two taking the piss or whatever, but it's just sometimes it's figuring out how to structure the story and stuff, but I really do enjoy it. But yeah, it normally takes a while. One episode, it'll normally take between 2 days and like a couple of weeks, depending on.
Because I remember when I spoke, like the night I met you, you were like, "Oh, I have to like always edit stuff." Like, for example, I'm like editing the next episode, or like doing some stuff for the show tonight, like after the gig in the hotel. Like,
oh right, yeah,
like it'd be
editing it. Yeah,
it'd be like pretty full on, I could imagine. But see, the thing is, with obviously with my podcast, I don't tend to need to do a lot of research because it's just conversations. I've had a few guests on in the past, like I had Tim Jacobus, who's the artist behind the Goosebumps books. He does the cover art.
Yeah, nice.
And I did a little bit of research on that because it wasn't like he's not a comedian. He's fucking funny though, but he wasn't a comedian. I was like, because when we were chatting, I was like, dude, if he's from New Jersey, I was just like, man, a standard dude from New Jersey is like the same level of comedy as like most open micers in Canberra. He could just like jump in, do a spot, and just tell a story, and like he'd do well.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no, it's interesting. Like, I like to hear more about behind the scenes stuff with the podcast and that sort of thing. Also, the live shows, does that change the dynamic much at all, doing it live?
Yeah, definitely. The vibe's very different. I think it's because you're sort of you're performing more. As you're probably working for laughs more. And then, yeah, I don't know. It always, the vibe is definitely different. I guess you get an energy from a crowd and stuff like that as well. Going into it, and I think maybe normally the topics you want to be a little bit sillier or whatever.
Yeah.
For some reason, you don't want it to be too dry. You want a few fun twists and turns and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. That's it's like.
Is that giving you a real good insight there, Marky?
Oh man, let me tell you, I will be listening with a different set of ears next time.
Yeah. Sorry to go so deep there.
Yeah, oh look, man, that's what it's about. Getting behind the scenes and just giving the fans what they want. I mean, I know that a lot of people listening to this episode will just be tuning in from your Do Go On crowd and just being like, man, just get to the sweet stuff.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I'm sure they've all followed me over here for sure.
Yep. So if you aren't one of the already Do Go On fans, make sure you check out the Do Go On podcast. It's really cool. I've listened to a few episodes of, it's one of those podcasts where I'll just sort of look for topics, just because I have such a massive backlog of podcasts. I'll sort of go through and look for specific things that I've always thought about, or topics that I know that I want to know more about.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Topics that you already know a lot about, you'd probably find it pretty annoying. Or if you're really passionate about a certain topic, we'll always get complaints from people who they're like, "Oh, what you're talking so much shit. Just get to the point." Or they're like, "I can't believe you didn't mention this niche thing about it," because they know every detail inside and out. I'd be like, "Why would you listen to a podcast about something you already know everything about?" But something you're interested in, or we often do topics that are like the Hindenburg disaster or something that you're like, I know that, I vaguely know there was a big blimp exploded, but I don't nothing more about it. Those kind of ones where you go, oh, I can, They're sort of in the back of your head. You vaguely know it, but you don't really know it.
Well, see, I've listened to a couple of the murder mystery ones, Black Dahlia Murder, and Jack the Ripper and that sort of stuff. So it's everyone sort of knows the killer's name or whatever, but they don't kind of it's. I like to hear more about and also it's in a platform that I can absorb. If I just watched a documentary, I'd probably get bored, but because there's some comedy elements and you guys are just having a general conversation and including facts, it makes it easier for me to take it in because it's not so serious.
Yeah, well, that's good. I guess that's kind of the hope, that it's sort of digestible or whatever, but yeah, it's normally mainly it's just meant to be fun, I guess.
No, I really enjoy what you do, man, and I'm looking forward to having you here in Canberra for the gig. Now, we'll give that one a plug. So we got comedy at the basement on the 3rd of May, and there's a promo code that's been set up for ticket sales, which I don't mind people on this show using as well. So if you just go on to I'll just flip the screen here, get get the ticket sale link. So it's on OzTix. Go check it out. There'll be a link in the bio to get 10% off. So if you go over to OzTix and put in your promo code "Do Go On," one word, then you get 10% off ticket sales.
Sick. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. How's the show's been going?
Yeah, good, man. It's something we've been doing for the last few months as the ticketed gig. I've run an open mic at the basement for the last few years, but decided to add a ticketed gig to the monthly schedule as well. And the last few have been really good. It's a good chance for people to come out and experience more of a showcase for comedians instead of the open mic where people might be trying new material and that sort of stuff. It's a good opportunity for people to come and see some of the more polished bits and longer sets and that sort of stuff, and then obviously topped off with a headliner every month as well. So yeah, I've had yourself, being the headliner for this one. But, you know, we've had, like, the first one I did had Daniel Muggleton in it, just trying to kick it off with, you know, a solid half an hour headliner. So,
yeah, sick. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, so this is next month, isn't it? May.
Yep.
It's going to be so good. We're in at time of recording last week of Comedy Festival in Melbourne. So, yeah, once this is done, looking forward to getting out on the road and, leaving Melbourne for a bit. There's been a few years of being just inside all the time. It's nice to be getting out and about.
Yeah, it's also like, I know, as I mentioned before about the like Bill Burr, Paul Verzi podcast, early on, don't worry, I'll watch how I swing this back into what we were just talking about. His new opener is a guy called Dean Delray, and he actually opened for when Bill did like a Zoom comedy show at the start of the lockdowns for like a charity gig. Daniel Muggleton opened for that, and the middle was Dean Delray, and then headliner Bill Burr. And the middle, Dean Delray said that like he always just wants to go out and do comedy. And Bill's just like, you need to like take time to to write comedy. Like you need to live life so you get bits. If you're just on stage or sitting in the hotel, you don't have enough stories to like talk about on stage.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think that just sitting at home for 2 years is
it's so funny. You've got time to write, but you don't have as much to write about.
Yeah,
it was not a super productive time for me for comedy, unfortunately.
Yeah,
when I thought, you think about at the start of the lockdowns, like, all right, it was a real chance to just do some writing, and it just didn't turn out to be, or what the stuff that I wrote didn't turn out to be too good. But because I think it's because it's the process, right? You need to check in with an audience to see
how it's going.
How it's going, yeah.
Well, they write it technically, not technically, but like you write it, but they like shape it.
Yeah, they edit it. Yeah,
sure. they're like directing it. And I think also a lot of the shit that I wrote during the lockdowns was relevant to the lockdowns. So like, I'm not going to go out in 2022 and do like an hour of COVID jokes because everyone's fucking heard it all and they don't give a shit. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, on any lineup there'll be enough of that probably without you needing to.
Yeah, for sure. No one cares about like, talking about like shit that everyone on the lineup talked about. Like if you, it's not like you're gonna go out this week and do a full hour on like Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. Yeah. Like you go to any open mic and everyone's done that. I did a bit about it, quickly recorded it and chucked it on social so I could forget about it because I'm like, that's as much as I'm gonna get out of that premise.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense.
But yeah, man, we'll wrap it up with that. Thanks heaps for being on the show. Looking forward to the gig on the 3rd, and yeah, we'll catch up again there, man. Is there anything else that you want to plug? I know you got your socials as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to hanging out up in Canberra. I think it's Matt Stewart Comedies on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, I think.
Yep.
And Matt Stew _art on Twitter. But yeah, if people looking for another podcast, do go on. I think it's like you did. If they just search a topic, there's nearly 350 episodes up there now. So
yeah,
we've gone through a lot of different kinds of things. Loch Ness Monster, sort of those kind of mythical creatures, to murderers, to singers and actors and stuff, their biographies, and all sorts of mysteries and random stuff. But yeah,
man, no, there's bound to be something there for everybody. I definitely found a few episodes over the time that I thoroughly enjoyed.
Oh, cheers, man.
Cool. All right.
Thanks so much for having us.
Cheers, man, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and remember to leave your 5-star reviews so I can read them out on the show.
Yeah, Hamish and Andy.
Don't buy me a drink. Just name names.
Yeah, right. Big Tony. You'll get fucking thrown out of the strip club with your floppy disk.
All day.
Make people feel shame for shit all day.
Don't blow
Turn
it.
it into a hard drive.
Yeah, right. You'll get fucking
We're here
Keep it simple. Count your money.
that they're not proud of. Just give me $10.
All right.